Lake Mead is drying up at a fast rate, and the reason behind it will shock you. Nearly 20 million people or more are dependent on Lake Mead for drinking water and power supply. The continuing 22-year downward trend, water levels in Lake Mead stand at their lowest since 1937, when the reservoir was still being filled for the first time. As of July 18, 2022, Lake Mead was filled to just 27% of capacity. This is the largest reservoir in the United States, which supplies water to millions of people across 7 states, tribal lands, and northern Mexico. It now stands as the prime example of climate change and a long-term drought. It might be the worst in the western U.S. in 12 centuries. The importance of Lake Mead was never in doubt, but sadly this important reservoir is alarmingly drying up. Recent changes in global climate conditions have seen bodies of water reducing in recent decades, and Lake Mead joins the list of drying out essential river sources. However, there seems to be more behind the lake's rapidly declining water levels. The largest reservoir in the United States, Lake Mead, was created by the Hoover Dam on the Colorado River, which spans Nevada and Arizona and provides electricity to hundreds and thousands of the locals. Due to the current drought in the western United States, it has been rapidly nearing the dead pool level at about 1,040.71 feet during the summer this year. The lake's water levels were at their lowest point since the early 1930s. The amount of precipitation is one of the major factors that determine the water levels in Lake Mead. It varies seasonally because of the winter snowpack flow from the Rocky Mountains down to the valley. However, due to climate change, it is getting harder to predict seasonal weather patterns. Thus, despite some increase in water levels, the lake is only 27% full. Another factor affecting the lake's decrease may be due to the poor planning of the Colorado watershed made about a century ago. A deal to regulate the water from the river was made in 1922 by the states of California, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. They had to pick a precise number to base the river's average yearly flow on, and they settled on 15 million acre-feet. They made the determination based on flow gauges that had recorded an average of 17 million acre-feet annually since 1890. However, that was an exaggeration because a wet spell was occurring in the Colorado watershed at the time. The more accurate estimate for the 20th century was 13 million acre-feet. The largest users of water from Lake Mead are the states of California and Arizona, of which California is still thought to draw from the lake about 3 times as much as Arizona, despite both states' efforts to use less water to safeguard the lake. Also, a treaty guaranteeing New Mexico 1.5 million acre-feet of Colorado River water was passed by Congress in 1944. There were no issues for the majority of the 20th century, as the flow of the river seemed endless, no one consuming their fair share of water, and everyone having a comfortable buffer in case of a drought. In 1956, Colorado River Storage Project, however, proposed fresh plans to use the river water to within a tenth of the anticipated water capacity. The proposal was expected to build enormous new infrastructure encouraging colonization of America's West, much like its sibling, the 1957 Interstate Highway Project. Arid terrain would be reclaimed for agriculture and urbanization with the construction of new dams, reservoirs, canals, and power lines in a larger version of California's Los Angeles Basin development. There was only one major issue. The design included the inflated flow number. Everyone continued to operate with this for the next 24 years with the false assumption that they were distributing about 16.5 million acre-feet of water annually, despite the mounting evidence to the contrary. The 1990s brought a wake-up call for the area. Over the years, there had been a lot of severe droughts which water planners had to look into until they found new discoveries about tree ring analysis and carbon-14. All living organisms absorb carbon-14, which they largely stop doing when they pass away, and thus nitrogen-14 is produced as a result of the radioactive decay of carbon-14. Therefore, when we find out how much carbon-14 a dead organism was absorbing when alive, we can measure how much carbon-14 is left in dead organic matter to determine how long it had been dead. Aldo Leopold, a naturalist of the Colorado River Delta, wrote, "The river was nowhere and everywhere. It was the region where waters originating in the Rocky Mountains meander into the Gulf of California and Mexico." Having explored the area by canoe in 1922, Leopold described the vast wetland as a swirl of 100 green lagoons, awesome jungles, and lovely groves. A century later, Leopold wouldn't recognize the delta. The lagoons have mostly turned to dust as a series of giant dams prevented the river from reaching the sea reliably for the past few decades. The drying up of the river is certainly an indication that something wrong is happening, says Carl Flessa, a geologist at the University of Arizona. Upstream, the Colorado has been drastically depleted, and it is partly down to the fact that people are taking too much water out of the river basin, and partly down to the megadrought, exacerbated by climate change, which means that the region the Colorado flows through is the driest it has been in 1,200 years. The river's plight has reached the crisis point. Are receding water levels revealing Lake Mead's secrets? Climate change and a historic drought affecting the Colorado River have turned local waterbeds throughout the Southwest into veritable deserts. In Lake Mead, just outside Las Vegas, the environmental crisis has led to the discovery of artifacts and even the remains of people who were lost to the waters long ago. Tina Bushman of Waco, Texas, learned that the remains of her father, Thomas Ernst, were found 20 years after he was lost in the waters while her family was swimming in the lake. He died in the place that he loved. Bushman told a reporter, "Climate change experts and local officials say that discoveries like these are going to become more common as the drought gets worse." According to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, Lake Mead's water levels are at a historic low, roughly 1,046 feet, and have been depleting at a rapid rate. The drought is so bad that even the mountains that surround the river have a white-colored imprint that shows where the water level used to be. DJ Jenner, the owner of Las Vegas Scuba, has been observing the lake for years, said that the water levels have gone down roughly 40 feet since he started his business. He said there is still plenty of water out there for people to come out and enjoy the lake, but it's going down pretty quickly. The drying up of the lake has resulted in a decrease in the lake's shoreline, and with it the emergence of many relics that were lying on the lake's floor. Jenner has found many weird things from the river, from coffee machines to the wreckage of a boat in the past few years. He predicted that there will be more finds as the waters keep receding. It's the recent gruesome discoveries that have made into the news and piqued the interest of netizens worldwide. Many human remains were discovered from the dried up sections of the lake. A diver found even more human remains from the lake in recent months. One of the remains was found in a barrel, and investigators said that the unidentified person was killed by a gunshot to their head. Even though investigations are still ongoing about this particular incident, some historians and fanatics have come to the conclusion that there could be mafia connections. The other bodies that were discovered were probably victims of accidental drownings. A sunken boat was also found from the exposed site, and the boat is said to be dating back to the Second World War. Officials expect more grim finds and have already received calls from many visitors about the possible remains that turned out to be animal bones or prop skeletons left by local scuba divers years later. A crashed B-29 plane has been in the water since 1948. As the water levels fall, light is reaching the plane for the first time in decades. The vast reservoir's water level has dropped more than 170 feet since 1983, the same year the Colorado River flooded the dam's spillways. Over-extraction, extreme heat, and decreased snowmelt have burdened the Colorado River basin, and nearly 40 years later, Lake Mead is down about 27% of its capacity. How is the drought affecting the people relying on Lake Mead? States like California, Arizona, and southern Nevada, who rely heavily on the reservoir contents for their water supply, have seen their populations grow exponentially, and due to the rising temperatures, the demand for the water is only increasing further. Water is needed for a lot of things aside from drinking. Watering lawns, various farming, and manufacturing industries all rely heavily on water as well. Adding to it, the alarming number of people and their exponential need for water in the Southwest region has increased considerably. Modern technology has done what it can as an attempt to satisfy the current demand for water, but the demand has seemed to outpace supply at a depressing rate, further refueling the cries for decreased water use and conservation. Scientists and engineers will keep using Lake Mead and its surrounding regions as a prime example of education, as it has served since its inception. When learning how to further design municipal projects in the areas of water supply and electricity creation, engineers have studied Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam as examples, using what is nearly 100 years of experience from how the Hoover Dam was designed and constructed to all the collateral effects to the ecosystem and the surrounding populations, as well as the successes as failures that came along with it. Watching how state leaders and engineers deal with the crisis of Lake Mead will hopefully offer further examples of problem-solving strategies so that we can continue to live as we are accustomed. If we as people, and the scientists and authorities who govern the infrastructure projects necessary to our modern world fail to adapt and understand how to solve these issues, then we just may be entering a crisis no one is prepared to deal with.